What's going on, everybody? Welcome to an episode of the Top Dogs podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. My name is Rob Doster, and this is not what I expected to be talking about when I woke up this morning on Thursday, June 6th, and having to talk about a report from Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN that the Lakers are targeting Dan Hurley to be the next coach of their franchise, and that he has always been the number one target and not JJ Redick to be the guy that they want to be the next coach of the team that is more or less coached by LeBron James. So a lot of things that I want to get to here. I will just note that we spent 45 minutes this morning, John Fanta, Jeff Goodman, and myself, talking through this decision, talking through this news, talking through what it means, talking through a couple of other topics, potential replacements. So I'll link that below. But there are some things that I wanted to just kind of, dive a little bit deeper on and kind of emphasize here on a UConn specific platform. So just working through all of this, I'm sure that a lot of other UConn fans are with me in being surprised and kind of being blown back by the fact that this is what is happening in the first week of June, after rosters have been set and everything is kind of moving through the process. So as always, if you enjoyed you here on this show, please rate, review, subscribe, do all of those things that make me happy as a podcaster. It is the best way to support this channel and support this podcast. Everything, we're all slaves to the algorithm, and the best way to be able to manipulate the algorithm is to get interactions on the content. So you guys know all of that by now. And if you are feeling upset about Dan Hurley leaving, hit that like button, leave a review, yell at him in the comment section. And yeah, it helps. It'll make you feel a little bit better, I promise. All right. So I'm going to start with this. Okay. From with Dan Hurley's fit in the NBA, from a basketball perspective, I don't know if there is a coach in college that is a better fit when it comes to NBA schemes, the NBA style, the NBA mindset than Dan Hurley. I think that he and his staff are elite when it comes to X's and O's. I think they are elite when it comes to creating uh, creative sets. I think that they are incredible when it comes to being able to find a way to maximize the specific talents of the players on their roster, uh, and to be able to create an uber efficient offense while doing that. I think the fact that they were as good as they were offensively last year with a center that didn't really space the floor and one of their primary initiators in Steph Castle that didn't really space the floor says everything you need to know about them. I think the way that they were able to adjust through some of the issues that Andre Jackson had last season says everything you need to know about them. I think the way that they were able to create counters upon counters upon counters says everything that you need to be able to know about them. If you talk to anybody that watches the NBA, that evaluates the NBA, that scouts the NBA, it tells you all you need to know about what that staff was able to run, the offense that they were able to create. Anybody that listened to JJ Redick's podcast, which has a lot of funny ironies right now with Dan Hurley, I think that says everything you need to know. JJ Redick is one of the smarter basketball minds out there, and even he was blown away by some of the stuff that Hurley and Luke Murray and Kamani Young and Tom Moore put together. So, from a basketball perspective, it's a perfect fit. There is no staff that is better prepared. There is no staff that has more detailed scouting reports. They're exceptionally smart. I think back to what UConn did to Purdue in the national championship game was a perfect game plan. I think what they did against Alabama was a perfect game plan. And that was not just an isolated incident. That was game after game after game after game. When it comes to preparation and scouting, they are the elite of the elite. And I think that that will translate to the NBA very, very well. The questions that I have are the same questions that everybody else has when it comes to Dan's personality and the way that that would work at the NBA level, right? He is aggressive in practice. He is loud in practice. He is demanding in practice. He holds hit everybody on that roster to a certain standard when it comes to execution, when it comes to perfection, when it comes to the minor details of pretty much every single thing in your life as a basketball player. And that is the question that I have about whether or not that will translate, right? I don't think that you can MF players in a huddle, in a practice. I don't think that you can run these 2.5 or 3 hour practices at the same level. I don't think that you can do some of the same things that he was doing in college at the NBA level and have that translate as well as you want it to. I was texting with some of the guys um, on our Field of 68 platform that have played in the NBA that now cover the college game about how this will work. And, the biggest thing was like he needs to change kind of the personality and the way that he carries himself. Um, one of the guys on our platform played for John Beeline in the NBA or and basically what he was saying is like there's a level of respect that Dan wants to carry when he steps into a locker room. And whether or not he will demand that respect from NBA players like a LeBron, like an Anthony Davis, is a very different thing. It's when you are a college coach stepping into an NBA locker room, a lot of these guys are going to be like, yeah, you did all that in college, but we've been in the pros for 10 years. What are you going to tell me that I don't already know? Um, it is a players league. The players have the power. And I think that is the one thing that will be a big adjustment for him at the NBA level. Now, I think there's a couple of different comparisons that can be made here, right? Like I think the thing about Billy Donovan and Brad Stevens when they eventually made their jumps to the NBA is that they have a certain personality about them that is a little bit more laid back than what Dan Hurley's personality is. And I think that that was why their adjustments have been more seamless. A guy like John Beeline, not so much. Like he kind of needed things done his way in his style and his methods and wasn't really ready to break from that. And that's why it did not work for him in Cleveland the way that a lot of people expected when you look at the basketball acumen and the kind of the offensive stuff that he did and his ability to develop players and identify talent and all that at the college level. So to me, that is the most important thing is whether or not Hurley can change. Now, the question I have is, will that be something that takes away what makes him good? Like this relentless pursuit for perfection, this relentless energy, the fact that he has a certain standard that nobody is allowed to deviate from, that nobody is allowed to dip from every single time that they set foot on that court, whether it's a game or a practice. Like that that stuff is what makes him great and the reason why he's been such an incredible coach at the college level the last 2 years, right? There's a standard that he demands. And if it's not up to that standard, he will cuss your ass out and let you know about it, especially in practice. And um, the players that he had love him for that, right? At the college level. But there are also 18, 19, 20, 21 year olds that are trying to get to the pros. We're talking about guys that are seasoned vets. We're talking about um, LeBron James. We're talking about Anthony Davis, right? Are they going to want to deal with that when they're in the later stages of their career? I don't know. I also have questions about the way that he deals with officials and the way that he deals with refs because I'm just imagining these NBA refs being like, "Who the hell does this college guy think he is? You're gonna yell at me, T? You want to yell at me, T? Get out of here. Go home. Go to the showers. Get out of here. We don't need you here right now." So that kind of stuff will need to be adjustment. But there's two things that I'll mention here. One, I do think that, and I've said this on the show before, the the crazy persona that he's developed, I think is much more calculated than people realize. He's not a loose cannon. He's not this complete psychopath. He has his moments where he kind of loses his mind, but I think 95% of what he does is calculated and smart and done for a very specific reason. And I think that he is smart enough to understand that if he goes to the NBA, he cannot be the guy that's going to MF refs up and down the court on every single possession because I don't think that it's going to work, right? Like you can't be that guy in those moments on that sideline when you are new to that league. Um, and I also think and this is the bigger point that I wanted to make here, that part of why this is something that I am kind of leaning towards happening in this moment right now, it is 11:34 a.m. on Thursday, is because of these doubts and because of these questions that people have. I'm going to read you a quote that Dan Hurley gave Seth Davis in a big story that Seth wrote for The Athletic after Dan won his first title. He sat down with Seth and talked about some of the mental health issues and talked about some of his anxiety and talked about some of his stressors and talked about all that. But this quote was the thing that stood out to me more than anything else now as I'm kind of looking back on it. Quote, "Don't get me wrong. It was an incredible feeling in the moment." He's talking about winning a title there. "It was an incredible feeling in the moment, but it hasn't fulfilled me in a way that maybe I thought it would. I was probably chasing that championship thinking there'd be some level of healing. It's like realizing there is no Santa Claus," end quote. And I think after getting to know Dan better over the course of the last couple of years, I think that what makes him wired the way that he's wired is he needs somebody to prove wrong. He needs to have that chip on his shoulder. He needs to be fighting against a narrative, fighting against the public, fighting against the media, fighting against rival fans, fighting against this perception that he's not good enough, that he has something to prove to everybody on the planet every second of every single day. And when you are the two-time reigning national champion that basically said F you to Kentucky when Kentucky came calling earlier this spring, that has a team that is rated by some people as high as preseason number one in the country, and you're going for a three-peat, like you don't have anything to prove to people. You've conquered college. People are now putting you in the conversation as like not just the best coach in college basketball right now, but one of the best coaches in college basketball in the history of the sport. Like if he gets a three-peat, he's in the same conversation as John Wooden and John Wooden alone, basically since most people that are covering the sport have been alive, right? And um, I don't know if that motivates him the same way as, hey, we don't think Dan Hurley works in college or works in the NBA, and having that be the narrative that's blasted across ESPN, across Fox Sports, on First Take, on Field of 68, on all of these different platforms, right? That's what everybody is asking is can Dan Hurley do it? Can he change himself? Does his personality work at the NBA level? And to me, when you combine the fact that everybody is doubting him and that he now has a new challenge to prove people wrong, while combining that with the fact that one, you would move to LA. And I don't really feel like I'm breaking news here when I say that the weather in LA is just a little bit nicer than the weather in Stores, Connecticut, right? Two, when you are going to coach a franchise that is synonymous with Magic Johnson, with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, with Shaquille O'Neal, with Kobe Bryant, with LeBron James, right? When you're going to coach the Lakers, when you when you factor in that his oldest son is now working, right? And his youngest son just graduated from UConn. He doesn't have that factor of being able to, have Andrews last season at UConn, be able to coach him. Like he's done all that. The thing that is holding him at UConn is the chance to go for a three-peat. And will that be enough to keep him in the college ranks when this opportunity looms? And like, look, I don't think that this is the perfect gig for him at the NBA level. I think that if you are talking about places that you want to be, uh, having your power kind of diluted by the fact that LeBron James is there, having the uncertainty of an organization that doesn't really know what they're going to do past LeBron, who is going to be 40 years old this year, when you have to deal with the potential of coaching up Bronny James, like the idea that bringing in Dan Hurley to develop Bronny James into a guy that's going to be a longtime NBA player, like that's kind of the narrative that's getting put out a little bit by Woj right now. And I don't know if that is your plan, if you're the Lakers to appease LeBron to try to develop Bronny in this manner. Like I don't know if that is the smartest way to make this work, but Once you get to the NBA and once you are in the NBA, that is something where I think it makes you can stay in the NBA, right? Like Billy Donovan went to the Oklahoma City Thunder. It didn't work. And he got another chance with the Chicago Bulls, right? Like Brad Stevens went to the Celtics. And once he was done coaching, he just went to a general manager role, right? And all of a sudden, you're in a situation where one, the life is better because you don't have to worry about recruiting. It's not a 24/7 job. Two, you don't have to worry about like parents and hangers-ons and roster building and all that kind of stuff. Like you are the guy that's there to just coach this basketball team. And off seasons are off seasons. Like you don't have to go on the road and recruit. You don't have live periods in June. You don't have live periods in July. You don't have to worry about the transfer portal. You don't have to worry about all this. It's there's a reason why NBA coaches, once they leave college, tend to stay in the NBA. It's a better life. So I think when you combine all of those things and all of those factors, to me, it would be I find it difficult to try to if Dan was sitting right next to me, right? If he was right here on this pod, I would find it very difficult to talk him out of going to the NBA ranks and giving it a shot if this is what he wants, right? If this is the dream. Now, there are some coaches that I think are built to be college basketball coaches. And I would classify Hurley as a guy that is built to be a college basketball coach. I think he fits better in college than he does in the NBA. But like I said, those doubts and those questions are what I think would drive him to taking this chance on an organization and a franchise in the NBA. Because what's the worst case scenario, right? You go, you coach LeBron, it's a complete disaster. You're gone after a year, and then hey, you're coming back to college, and every single college basketball program in existence would be opening up their paychecks or opening up their wallets and dropping a bag as big as they possibly could get to bring you back into their organization. So I think that this is something that he probably needs to do for himself. I think it's something that he probably wants to do. And it is such an incredibly intriguing opportunity that I find it difficult to see him turning down. Now, the one thing that I would say, whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system. If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners, the viewers of the Field of 68 throughout the year. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. The best part, all you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your own hard-earned money to be eligible. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. BetMGM is going to have some fun offers available throughout the NBA playoffs. Bet insurance tokens, odds boost, and what I love, a nice parlay booster too from time to time, as well as a ridiculous array of player prop bets for any sport that you could possibly imagine betting on. BetMGM is and always will be the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app, use the bonus code FIELD, and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content that you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the podcast. Like and share the YouTube videos. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show. Is that I do believe that a lot of the cliche stuff when it comes to family, when it comes to culture, when it comes to loyalty, I think all of that stuff exists a little bit more in the fabric of the UConn program right now than a lot of other places in the country. And I think seeing a guy like a Jalen Stewart, a guy like a Solo Ball, a guy like a Samson Johnson, a guy like a Jaden Ross avoid putting their name in the portal. Seeing a guy like an Alex Caravan come back to school for another season, right? Seeing someone like a Liam McNeely and an Aiden Mahaney and a Terrace Reed commit to UConn and commit to Dan Hurley, I think that that actually means something to him. And I think that his word means something to him. And I think that even something as basic as the fact that literally 8 days ago, he was trying to get Alex Caravan to pull his name out of the draft and come back to school and go for a three-peat, right? I think that that actually means something to him. So I do think that there is an element of this that is he does not want to let those guys down that believed in him, and he does not want to go back on some promises that he made. Um, I think that in their heart of hearts, like all of those guys would understand if the Lakers job came around, the opportunity to go for it. But I think that that turning his back on them and letting them down in that situation is something that uh, would be if he comes back. That's why he would be coming back because he has a chance to be a three-peat. He has a chance to be the greatest ever, and he does not want to go against the promises that he made. So that is if you're hoping against hope that he comes back, if you're a UConn fan, that is what you got to be hoping against. But um, so if he leaves, let's just talk about this. If he ends up leaving, right? UConn players would have 30 days to enter the portal. Now, I think that there is a little bit of confusion there. And to be honest, like I've sent a couple texts. As soon as we're done here, I'm going to make a couple calls. I'm not entirely clear on what it means if a transfer, if a guy like Caravan, if Liam McNeely, if they signed a contract with a collective, how easy it is to get out of that, if they are locked in, if there are buyouts, or if that's even something where the collectives would want to try to hold them. I doubt that they would, but that is a question that I've been asked a couple times, and I'm going to try to find the answer to here in a little bit. But um, I they would all those players would have 30 days to put their name in the portal and look at someplace else. And I think the most important thing involved with that would be some of those guys took, I don't want to say a pay cut, but lower numbers to be able to come to UConn versus what they could have gotten if they were elsewhere or if they were on the open market for, let's say, a Caravan or a Liam McNeely. There are other programs that would want Aiden Mahaney. There are people that would go out there and spend a lot of money right now to try to go get someone like a Solo Ball or a Jalen Stewart that would have a chance to be able to step into bigger minutes in another program. So if he's gone, there's basically two options, right? You can either promote from within, whether that's Luke or probably more likely, my guess would be Kamani, the associate head coach. Um, or you go and you try to get somebody from outside the program. And let's talk about the potential for the outside stuff first before we talk about Kamani or Luke getting promoted. Uh, the buyouts for a lot of the guys that would get associated with a job like this whether it's a Nate Oates, whether it's a Scott Drew, whether it's I don't even know Chris Beard would be associated, but like those big names who get mentioned for all of these jobs like Louisville and Kentucky have been tied up to long-term contracts with big buyouts because of jobs like Louisville and Kentucky being open back in March and April. So I don't know if those options are necessarily available to UConn. You need someone with a lower buyout that has the ability to leave that job. And there are two names that I've heard from people from out like that could be involved here. Um, the first one is Bruce Pearl, and I think that's the most obvious connection to make because he's got the Northeast ties. He's from Massachusetts, because he's been so successful at Auburn, because he has a lower buyout at Auburn, and because he's currently at a place that is not necessarily considered uh, a a nationally a national powerhouse program, right? Like UConn is a better basketball program than Auburn. It might not be in the SEC, but it is a better basketball program than Auburn. And I do think that that is something that would be interesting to him. Now, the other side of it is if I'm Bruce Pearl and I'm trying to get my son Steven, who's currently an assistant on his staff, the kind of deal that Kellen Sampson is trying to get at Houston with his dad Kelvin as the head coach. The best way to get it in writing that Stephen Pearl is going to be the guy that replaces Bruce Pearl as the head coach at Auburn would be to entertain any potential offers from UConn and then go back to Auburn. That's what we call leverage, right? And I think that that is something that could very well come into play in this scenario if you are Auburn and Bruce Pearl and UConn in the situation. I also don't know if outside like, from a basketball perspective, I think it's a home run hire. Like he understands how to get a fan base motivated. I think that outside of look, he might even be better than Dan Hurley. He might be the best in the country when it comes to being able to rile up a fan base and understanding how to be able to get them motivated, get them going, say the right things in the media. Like he is perfect at that, right? Basketball perspective, he plays an up tempo style. Like he's an incredible basketball coach. And I said it during those other searches, like he would be the first guy that I would hire at Louisville. He would have been the first guy that I would have hired at Kentucky. He would have been the first guy that I hired at Texas. I said it before they hired Chris Beard. I said it before they gave Rodney Terry the contract. And I made the argument if you go back that Bruce Pearl would be a guy I would take a look at when Shaka Smart left. Right, like I think that Bruce Pearl is incredible when it comes to doing those things, and I think that he would be able to do the same at UConn. I think he would understand what that fan base is like because he grew up in the area. Now, the the other thing that maybe wouldn't be the greatest fit is Connecticut is a much bluer state than Alabama is, and I don't know how many fans would completely buy into some of the opinions that Bruce Pearl has, but that is a bridge that would need to be crossed once you kind of get to that point. So that is one thing that I think would absolutely come into a factor when if that ends up being a conversation that needs to be had. But that is a bridge that we can cross when we get there. The other one that was mentioned to me was Will Wade at McNeese State. He is a winner. He would be able to recruit. He's got a lot of shit to him. He kind of understands. Um, he would know what it would take to kind of get the UConn fan base going, and his buyout really is not all that high at McNeese State, but there's a lot of other factors at play when it comes to Will Wade. I haven't, again, I'm not. Please don't aggregate that and say that Rob is saying that UConn is interested in hiring Will Wade. That is just the name that was mentioned to me. There's not a lot of names out there that would be able that are hireable right now, and that is one that was mentioned to me that I think would actually be pretty good. But if I'm UConn, I think I would be doing everything I could to try to keep Kamani and Luke there. I would promote Kamani Young if Dan Hurley left. I would make him be the head coach. I would make Luke Murray be the associate head coach. Um, and that's just kind of how I would do it. I think that Kamani is above him in the pecking order, and that is the way that these things kind of work. And I think Kamani has more than earned an opportunity to get his shot at UConn. I think that he would be. Uh, I think he is worth the risk. That you never know how good a guy is going to be until you put him in that role. But I think that if you give Kamani a shot, he will be successful. And I think that is also your best shot at being able to keep this roster um, as intact as possible. Right. I think you would lose. You have the least amount of attrition if you were able to just promote from within and keep a guy like Kamani there. Um, if I'm Dan, I'm doing everything I can to bring Luke with me as the number one guy on my bench because I think a lot of the game planning and the offense and the scouting is a result of Luke Murray. But um, I think that it would, if you're going to promote from within, my guess is it's probably going to end up being Kamani Young. So uh, I'll end it on this, right? Um, we saw with the Kentucky Lynx that got shot down just about immediately, right? Like Dan was saying after the national title game, like, you can ask my wife if she wants to move to Lexington. He was making jokes, he was cracking jokes, he was talking about three peats, like he was loose, he was having fun with it. You haven't heard anything from him. You haven't seen the jokes. I promise you, every reporter in the country has his number. Every reporter in the country has reached out to him, including myself. Every reporter in the country is reaching out to his agent, is reaching out to his wife if they have her contact info. And you don't have that same kind of pushback. So I think what that tells you at the bare minimum is that this is going to be a very, very difficult decision for him and one that he is taking very seriously. And if I had to put a gun to my head, right, my guess is that it's probably 60-40, maybe a little bit higher, that Dan Hurley will be the next head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers franchise. And if he's gone, one, I hope fans don't turn on him and say you turned your back on you. He gave us two national titles. He pulled us back from the depth and he made us back to being a top five program in the sport of college basketball. Right now, the number one program in the sport of college basketball. I'm incredibly thankful for uh, I look. I told him this after they lost in the first round of the tournament in 2021 that I was incredibly thankful for him making UConn become a relevant part of my life once again, right? And something that I looked forward to every single game that they played and lived and died with every single game that they played. Um, they won two titles, right? They've given us memories that you can't replace. The stuff that you know, seeing my son walk around the house in a Cam Spencer jersey, like watching his first real experience as a sports fan being copying Joey Calcaterra's 3-point celebration, right? Seeing him get all fired up when Alex Caravan says that he's coming back to school, having him know who Adama Sanogo is and know who Steph Castle is, and do this when he hits jump shots out in the driveway, right? To kind of replicate Tristan Newton. The fact that that is what his first memories as a sports fan are going to be, and the first time that he really got locked in on sports, like you can't put a price on that stuff. You can't put a price on those memories. You can't put a price on. I brought both of my kids to the Big East tournament title game this year, and they watched UConn win and cut down the nets. Right, I brought them to the Texas game and they were able to walk up and go say hi and talk to Luke and talk to Kamani and talk to Tom and talk to Dan Hurley when they were at the game. I've told this story before, but um, when there were there were multiple times when my daughter just one time she jumped on a Zoom when we were recording something for a podcast. Another time I was FaceTiming her and Dan took the phone when I was in stores and talked to my daughter. Like the fact that he did that is stuff that you're those are going to be lifetime memories for them. My daughter thinks that she and Dan Hurley are friends at this point, right? So, um, those are things that you can't replace, and those are memories that those two are going to have forever. So I will be grateful to Dan for what he did in those regards forever. And if this is the last time that he coaches UConn or the last time that he coaches in college, then I will do nothing but wish him the best of luck at the next level. And if he comes back, I'm going to be so fucking fired up about it because that means there's no doubt in my mind UConn is going to three-peat. And if it ends up being Kamani Young or Luke Murray that is leading this program on a charge for a three-peat, you know what? I'm going to be all the way behind him because that is all the only thing that you can do. So until we have more news, until anything else comes out from about this, I would just encourage everybody to step away from the ledge, to think about what has happened over the course of the last 18 months, to remember that it felt like the world was ending as recently as January 2023, and to sit here and bask in the glow of the fact that for at least 9 more months, UConn will be the back-to-back reigning national champions in the sport of college basketball. And regardless of what you think about the potential of Hurley leaving for the NBA, nothing can change that. So that's where I'm at with it. If he ends up going, I will do nothing but wish him the best of luck.